Welcome to Rock Saga, Episode 1, Lennon vs. Rundgren. I have on my desktop today a folder with subfolders, text files, images, and MIDI files. Now I've used my finger, I've used my mouse, I've used Google, I've copied, I've pasted, I've edited, perhaps I've even used my mind to attempt to assemble an entertaining, informative YouTube video for your consumption. Please consider I'm just a guy. I threw this together. It's all hearsay. This all happened a real long time ago. And if you feel that this video is chock full of inaccuracies, assumptions, hearsay, exaggeration, and flat-out lies, you would be correct. I never met Todd Rundgren, and I certainly never met John Lennon. So, before you rage out in my comment section, I would encourage you to make your own video. That would really make me happy. Now on to Rock Saga. Today's episode of Rock Saga begins with an end. And in the end, the love you take. So we have John Lennon. Sorry about that. Beatles break up in 1970, and Lennon's initial solo success and activism give peace a chance, bed-ins, hairpiece, and love is the answer. 1973 to 1976 ushers in The Lost Weekend. Trouble in Paradise. Yoko Ono, certainly a controversial figure in John Lennon's life. Some consider the fact that, in fact, she was John Lennon's handler. If you look into the rumors or conspiracy theories about the fact that the entire 60s were orchestrated by a think tank called the Tavistock Institute, or the rumor that the Beatles didn't write any of their music, and that Yoko Ono worked for the Illuminati, for lack of a better term, serving as Lennon's handler on a mission to stifle him. See, Lennon carried a very powerful anti-war peace and love message, which does not jive with the military-industrial complex mantra of war is good, war means cash, war is God. Yoko Ono provided John with the mother figure he never had. John Lennon's mother was run over by an automobile. She ended her life. Yoko Ono led him into heroin addiction, which helped in aiding keeping his mouth shut as he wasted away in the Dakota during the worst chapters of his life. What we see in the media is a bread-baking house husband, but what his personal assistant by the name of Fred Seaman was to come out paints a much darker, sadder picture of a failed, miserable marriage between the two. Yoko Ono, a supposed insomniac who spends 20 hours a day on the phone making business deals. Yoko Ono also lied, claiming she had no idea who John Lennon was, no idea who the Beatles were, but in fact she had already met Paul McCartney. It's publicly known that this is a fact. So why is she lying? Yoko Ono abandoned her own daughter. John Lennon was married, Cynthia Lennon. He had a son, Julian Lennon, who has been cut out of all inheritance. Julian Lennon was forced to bid on his own childhood letters he had written to his father. Yoko Ono certainly doesn't win Mother of the Year award from me on that one. One can fairly easily connect the dots when you see how the FBI was involved in stifling John Lennon. There was more than one agency and entities involved in controlling this brilliant but deeply flawed artist's destiny, and how his life was cut short in 1980 leaves many with more questions than answers about who was actually responsible for pulling the trigger, who was behind all of this. It's a twisted web that leaves you with many more questions than answers. John Lennon had made a hugely successful comeback with the double fantasy album in 1980, the same year in which his life was taken from him. Some folks believe this was a result of a blood pact he signed along with Paul McCartney, an actual deal with the devil, a trade of their souls for the fame. Those Paul is dead rumors could in fact be a reality. Again, looking at this history from all angles, we see there is certainly no shortage of questions, theory, and speculation. Considering the fact that John Lennon's life was cut short, and reading even further between the lines, one can connect the dots, leading towards Todd Rundgren perhaps planting a seed in a very sick mind. Rainbow Bar and Grill in Hollywood, California. Todd Rundgren, an up-and-coming solo artist, the brilliant career ahead of him, is in tow with Wolfman Jack, legendary radio DJ, all-around rock and roll personality. This is a quote from Rundgren. I met John Lennon at a place called The Rainbow in Los Angeles during his carousing days with Harry Nilsson. He was sitting at a booth and someone introduced me to him. I said hi, but had no conversation. I wasn't loaded enough. That was the only face-to-face experience I ever had with him. But there was this infamous exchange we had through a British music paper called The Melody Maker. Someone interviewed me when I was in England. I'm not exactly sure how John's name came up, but the context was to do with his credibility as a revolutionary. John's antics were fairly well publicized at the time. He was going out every night and getting drunk. There was one particular incident where he got into an altercation with a waitress and apparently was wearing a Kotex tampon on his head and acting somewhat boorish. In this song, Rundgren takes on musicians who sing about changing the world but do nothing about it. The line, "Get up, see the revolution on TV," seemed to be directed at John Lennon and his song Revolution. This led to a war of worlds between Lennon and Rundgren that played out in the press. In September 1973, Rundgren did an interview with the British magazine Melody Maker where he said, "John Lennon isn't no revolutionary. He's a fucking idiot, man. Shouting about revolution and acting like an ass, it just makes people feel uncomfortable. All he really wants to do is get attention for himself, and if revolution gets him that attention, he'll get that attention through revolution." Lennon replied in the magazine with his quote, "Open lettuce to sod runtwhistle," where he wrote, "Somebody played me your rock and roll pussy song, but I never noticed anything. I think that the real reason you're mad at me is because I didn't know who you were at the Rainbow. Remember the time you came in with Wolfman Jack? When I found out later, I was cursing because I wanted to tell you how good you were. I had heard you on the radio." So Lennon snubbed Rundgren. And Rundgren got his feelings hurt because he wanted to work with Lennon. He wanted to produce him. Rundgren had built himself a studio. He was a brilliant up-and-coming producer, engineer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, vocalist that could pretty much do whatever he wanted to do, and it would come out magical. following Lennon's initial solo success in activism, period from 1973 to 1976, is known as the Lost Weekend. Yoko Ono sends John Lennon to live in Los Angeles, but he's not alone. He's accompanied by May Pang. He rents a house. She is sent with as a surrogate, perhaps a handler, definitely a lover, to keep close tabs and a tight leash on Lennon while giving him the illusion of freedom as May Pang reports back to home base Yoko Ono. He spent his time with another famous artist, perhaps the greatest vocalist of our time, Mr. Harry Nilsson. They were known as the Hollywood Vampires. Alice Cooper, Keith Moon, Ringo Starr, Mickey Dolenz, Harry Nilsson, John Lennon, Belushi, Mark Bolan, Keith Emerson, Joe Walsh, and bass player extraordinaire Klaus Voormann, among others. Brandy Alexanders were the drink of choice, and cocaine was what fueled their misadventures. There was a spot atop the Rainbow Grill labeled the lair of the Hollywood Vampires, where this drinking club would hold its court, leading their members intoxicated on a mixture of cocaine and Brandy Alexanders. Famously heckling the Smothers Brothers with a toilet seat over the neck and a Kotex on the forehead is Harry Nilsson and John Lennon in tow. They were actually asked to leave at a comeback performance of the slightly less hip Smothers Brothers. This event has a few conflicting reports. One has Lennon belligerent and violent towards a waitress. His side of the story, well, it leaves out the violence. But reports are that he shoved or slapped this woman at the Troubadour after drunkenly heckling the Smothers Brothers, actually ruining their comeback performance set. Lennon had become belligerent as the pair were physically ejected from the Troubadour, which, despite how you may feel about the Smothers Brothers, heckling like that's never cool. This made the headlines big time. While Harry Nilsson and John Lennon were cavorting through the so-called Lost Weekend, they also took the time to record an album which is called Pussycats. Harry Nilsson's voice was famously pushed beyond its limits, and he was said to be spitting up blood in the studio in between screaming contests with John Lennon, who had participated in a form of infantile psychological healing therapy, which is known as scream therapy. The resulting album is nothing short of a masterpiece. Harry Nilsson's Pussycats, produced by John Lennon. In an apparent answer or retort,
Todd Rundgren
wrote a song on his
Wizard True Star
LP, which is titled Rock and Roll Pussy. Get it? Pussycats, rock and roll pussy. And here are the lyrics. Beat it, beat your guitar. Smash it, till it sees stars. Rip it, rip it to shreds. Throw down your axe and then jump into bed. Get up and see. Revolution on the TV. Will you get your nails dirty? Or are you only just a rock and roll pussy? Eventually, John Lennon returns to the Dakota. He reestablishes his relationship with Yoko Ono as she encourages him to live a normal life and have a healthy relationship with the New York City streets, with his fans, with street people, photographers. It's a well-known fact that John Lennon can be seen entering and exiting the Dakota every day. You can approach him. He's incredibly friendly and patient with fans, enduring whatever requests for photographs, autographs, what have you, and leaving them with, is that all that you want? or need before making his exit. It makes you think, it makes you wonder if John Lennon would still be alive had he chosen to stay in Los Angeles with May Pang, rather than return to the Dakota with Yoko Ono urging him to spend time wandering the New York City streets
like an everyday mook.
Fart sniffer Chapdick endured a troubled childhood before becoming a born-again Christian. He shot and killed John Lennon outside the iconic musician's Manhattan apartment building on December 8, 1980, claiming he did so because he would like to inherit the ex-Beatles' immense fame by assassinating him. He was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. Fart sniffer Chapdick has since been denied parole multiple times. Will more than likely rot in prison to the end of his cock-sucking, miserable existence. In 1980, Lennon released the album Double Fantasy, his first record release in years, bringing the ex-Beatle out of seclusion and putting him back in the spotlight. On December 6, 1980, Chapdick purchased the Double Fantasy at a New York record store. 2 days later, with the album in hand, Dickless waited outside the Dakota, Lennon's posh Manhattan apartment building. He watched as Lennon exited the building at approximately 5:50 p.m. on his way to a recording session. Walked around his limousine, a smiling Lennon generously agreed to autograph the album for Chapdick, while an amateur photographer clicked a photograph. Dickless then strangely placed his newly autographed album atop a nearby planter. Around 10:30 that evening, Lennon returned home in his limousine. Chapdick was waiting. This time, he was after much more than an autograph. As Lennon and his wife Yoko Ono left the car, Dickless raised his gun and fired several shots at the musician, cowardly hitting him 4 times in the back and the shoulder. Ono, who was standing next to her husband, witnessed the incident. Lennon was pronounced dead just 1 hour later at nearby Roosevelt Hospital. When New York City police officers arrived at the scene, they discovered Dickless casually thumbing through a copy of J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye. Chapdick was of course denied parole for the 8th time in 2014 and for the 10th time in 2018. Chapdick first read Catcher when he was 16, Holden's age in the book. Like Holden, Chapdick loved children. He was a favorite counselor at the YMCA camp. Between spells of Christianity and then Satanism, Chapdick returned to the Holden Caulfield character. The Catcher in the Rye is a novel by J.D. Salinger, partially published in serial form in 1945 and 1946, and then as a novel in 1951. It was originally intended for adults, but is often read by adolescents for its themes of angst and alienation, and as a critique on the superficiality in society. Holden Caulfield in the book is a childlike young adult who views the world as being full of adult phonies, or fake people who are basically full of shit, selfish, and live to fulfill their own needs and desires, regardless of others. This book has been associated with more than one murder or assassination, including Robert John Bardo's murder of Rebecca Schaefer and John Hinckley Jr.'s assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan. The novel deals with complex issues of innocence, identity, belonging, loss, connection, sex, and depression. While living in Hawaii, Dickless requested that the state attorney general change his name to Holden Caulfield. Chapdick believed that Holden Caulfield would have killed Lennon. I'd look at a picture of Lennon and say, "You phony, I am going to get you." And then I would pray for demons to enter my body to give me the strength to pull the gun out. After murdering his victim, Chapdick planned to hold up a copy of Catcher in the Rye and to shout, "I am Holden Caulfield," in the catcher of the rye of the present generation. However, he was surprised to discover that he did not turn into Caulfield after shooting Lennon, as he remained dickless. Dakota Doorman Jose Perdomo. Compelling evidence points to Dakota Doorman Jose Joaquin Senenges Perdomo as Lennon's actual killer. Records reveal Jose Perdomo was an anti-Castro Cuban exile and member of Brigade 2506 during the Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961, a failed CIA operation to overthrow Fidel Castro. Perdomo was a professional hitman who worked closely with convicted Watergate burglar Frank Sturgis for about 10 years on the CIA's payroll. Jose Perdomo was the doorman at the Dakota on December 8th, the night John Lennon was killed. Jose Perdomo was at the crime scene when the murder occurred. Jose Perdomo asked accused assassin Fart Sniffer Chaptic immediately after the shooting if he knew what he had just done. Dickless replied that he had just shot John Lennon. Jose Perdomo told police Chaptic was Lennon's assailant. One of the arresting officers, Peter Cullen, did not believe that Chaptic shot Lennon. Cullen believed that the shooter was a handyman at the Dakota, but Perdomo convinced Cullen it was Chaptic. Cullen thought Chaptic looked like a guy who worked in a bank. Jose Perdomo, on the other hand, looks like an assassin. Other strange facts and coincidences about the Dakota relating to director Roman Polanski, filming his masterpiece Rosemary's Baby there, a film in which a satanic cult ushers in the birth of the Antichrist by impregnating a young, unsuspecting woman who is a tenant of the same building, packed full of Satan-worshipping cult. Leave me scratching my head, as do so many loose ends, rumors, and veiled truths about the events during the 60s relating to the Manson family, the Tavistock Institute, things like Doris Day being replaced, supposed Paul is dead, McCartney's supposed death and replacement on September 11th of 1966. All of this will leave your head spinning, leave you searching for answers where none exists. One can only hope that time, in fact, will reveal more, as what I've been trying to illustrate all along is that things are indeed not what they seem. We have been lied to, we are being lied to, and we will continue to be lied to. The rivalry between John Lennon and Todd Rundgren took a strange and tragic turn when it was revealed that Lennon's killer, Fart Sniffer Chaptic, was similarly obsessed with Todd Rundgren and tried to find him a few days before John Lennon's murder. Chaptic left a copy of Rundgren's second album with a small shrine dedicated to artist Todd Rundgren in the hotel room where he checked out of the day that he killed Lennon. When he was caught, Chapman was wearing a promotional t-shirt from Todd Rundgren's Hermit of Mink Hollow album. In an interview after his incarceration, Chaptic said Rundgren's music was the soundtrack to my life. Looking at this entire situation case from a very wide angle, it seems to me this apparent motive, the fact that Todd Rundgren, his feud with Lennon was widely publicized in the media. This has been written about to death in music publications spanning many years after Lennon's death, but it's never come up, this connection between Lennon's assassin and Rundgren, because Rundgren came out, pointed a finger at Lennon and called him a phony long time before Chapman did. That was supposedly Chapman's motive. So it almost appears to me that I'm falling into a trap by a very wise think tank of people who have laid this trail of breadcrumbs for me to find. The press was instructed to stay away from it, because as soon as you read about the fact that his assassin wore a Todd Rundgren shirt at the scene of the crime, that he left a shrine with the album at the hotel, and then you read that Todd Rundgren had come out and spoke out against Lennon, which you have to understand, Rundgren wanted to work with Lennon. He was of that caliber. If you listen to what he was recording back then, certainly a collaboration between these two men would have yielded spectacular results. And it's a shame that they never did work together. It's a shame that Lennon didn't have his shit together when he was at the Rainbow, when Wolfman Jack brought Rundgren in to introduce him. It's really a shame that this all played out the way it did. But the fact of the matter, to me, looking at this situation, it has nothing to do with Todd Rundgren, the fact that John Lennon, his life was cut short. I think that would have happened if we eliminate everyone in the video so far that I had mentioned. I believe that Lennon still would have lost his life right around the same time that it happened, because I believe that other forces were at work. I believe that this was a setup, that Jose Perdomo played a part. He was there. Whether or not he pulled the trigger, who knows? All I can tell you is it makes for a fascinating story when you're looking at things involving the 60s, like the Manson story, or the Tavistock Institute, the Beatles, the fact, Beatlemania, mass hysteria, this type of thing. It's really frustrating because you end up with a lot of theory. You end up with a lot of questions and not enough answers. So it's not for me to point a finger, and to be completely honest, I'm a massive fan of Todd Rundgren's work. While his entire career has experienced peaks and valleys, reports of his tours mirroring that. The fact is, his early work is undisputedly excellent. If you are not a Todd Rundgren fan, I would urge you to immediately consume his masterpiece, A Wizard, a True Star. The album he recorded on a shoebox full of peyote buttons in his DIY home studio, after someone in the press, more than likely a Rolling Stone music critic, had coined him a male version of Carole King. Perhaps Todd felt he had a point to make or an axe to grind, as the resulting album is a stunning achievement in creativity, breaking all the rules of the LP format of the time. He was light years ahead of his time, and all of the early Todd Rundgren music up until a few releases of the supergroup Utopia are pure, solid gold, magical music. If you take anything away from this mess, this pile of hearsay, lies, exaggeration, and speculation, it should be this one fact. Todd Rundgren's music is fucking amazingly great. Thank you for joining me for Rock Saga, Episode 1. I am PD Two Finger.